Hi, this is Chaitanya. I welcome one and all to watch the podcast of Srm Talks on Wobistdude online publication. Cheers.
Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody listening. Welcome to the Wobistdude podcast. I'm here with Chaitanya, or Chet, as some other people in this little German town might know him as. Chet, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Mike. Thank you, first of all, for having me here today.
Hey, yeah.
So, as you already mentioned, I'm Chaitanya. I recently completed a master's in sustainable resource management at the Technical University of Munich.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm originally from India, where I grew up, did my bachelor's in instrumentation engineering, worked for a bit before moving to Germany. Professionally speaking, I have now been working for 7 or 8 years, mostly in the sector of environment and sustainability. I started out in the private sector, working for a big corporation with a focus on energy efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
But then the work was fantastic.
Yeah.
I acquired a lot of my professional skills that I hold today in that job. But there was a void. I felt I was missing the connection to the community. And that's when I decided to move to the development sector.
Mm-hmm.
Worked with an NGO that was focusing on energy access in unelectrified and de-electrified parts of India. So I could carry forward my energy skills, but
Mm-hmm.
apply them in the context of community development.
Nice.
Very fulfilling. Then I moved to Germany and then pursued this master's, and I'm now working with 2 very interesting organizations.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is called Buzzin, again in the energy sector, and the other is called Open Forests, focusing on forest management.
Nice. And the master's program for people listening is called Sustainable Resource Management. It's a program that I am a part of, and several of our other podcast guests have also been a part of. Now, these 2 jobs you're talking about, are they full-time jobs for you, or is it a passion project on the side? What is your involvement like in these projects?
Because if I was doing one as a full-time,
Mm-hmm.
I would not have had the time for the other. So in that sense, they are both part-time.
Yeah.
However, as a ballpark figure, I devote 4 days a week to my job at Buzzin,
Mm-hmm.
and 1 day in the week to Open Forests.
Nice.
And as hobby projects, passion projects, I have something else going on.
Nice. Can we actually talk about... We're actually here to talk about one of these passion projects. It's called Srm Talks, and we mentioned earlier that SRM is Sustainable Resource Management. So SRM Talks, could you talk a little bit about what this event is and what the purpose is?
Sure. So this evolved as an idea towards end of 2016,
Mm-hmm.
when at a lunch at the university cafeteria, a handful of my friends and I, we were deliberating about how we get to listen to some very fascinating topics in our lecture halls.
Yeah.
We come across some very important topics concerning environment, nature, and everything that lives and breathes around us.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very good to get this academic perspective on topics, but we asked ourselves, so how is this getting practiced or
Mm-hmm.
getting handled in real life beyond classrooms?
Yeah.
And this was especially a big question for a lot of my study colleagues who are international students.
Yeah.
As you know for yourself, that SRM, Sustainable Resource Management, is an international master's program.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them are in Germany, in the EU for the very first time, and know
Yeah.
that much less about how things are happening.
Yeah.
So we didn't arrive at an answer to these questions. I went back, slept over it, and I thought, what could be the easiest way of tackling this? Perhaps to get the practitioners into these classrooms and telling students what they do and how they do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So did it start off as like organizing guest lectures and then it became an event, or could you walk us through maybe the first event, how it came about?
Right. So once this idea came, I, along with a few of my study colleagues, worked on the concept
Mm-hmm.
I would like to name them here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was supported by 3 very good friends. They are called Rim Rizgi, Alejandro Castella, and Ariana Berer. They're also SRM students, and they have also now either finished their masters or are close to completion. So we started to work on the concept, and we started to address it by 3 important questions: why, what, and how. So the what, or I would say the what was rather clear to us, that we wanted to have a platform where we get practitioners to come and interact with the students.
Yeah.
And the why was basically to fill that knowledge gap, as I mentioned. But then in addition to that, also help the sustainable resource management master students to come in contact with the master and bachelor students of the other programs that are being offered by our faculty.
Nice.
To name them, they are, I think, known as the bachelors in forest and wood science, and the master, I think, is also called the same. These are the 2 programs that are offered in German language, and that sort of creates a slight isolation between the Sustainable Resource Management International Masters program and the 2 German programs. So we wanted to bring all the students together.
So if, would it be fair to say it's like part cohesion, part education, and part networking for real world application for students?
You got it right.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And what kind of criteria do you have when looking for guests to be on this talk series?
We try to bring people who have a vast experience. And when I say vast experience, it doesn't necessarily have to be dictated by the number of years they have been practicing. It could also be people who've acquired rich experience in a very short amount of time, but people who really would have useful content to speak to the listeners. In addition to that, obviously in a public forum, to inspire the listeners, to educate the listeners, they should also be good orators.
Yeah.
And then if I may just take a slight detour and explain to you the format.
Yes,
which
please.
would then sort of connect back to this answer that I'm giving you. So as I said, we had answered the what and the why, and the how was the format of the event.
Yes.
From the very first event, we tried to get it right in the way we wanted to conduct it, and 2 years down the line, it hasn't changed much. So we always hold this event on the last Wednesday of the month, and only during the period when lectures are happening on campus. So that allows us to conduct 4 SRM talks in the winter semester, and 3 or maybe 4 again in the summer semester. The event gets underway after the lectures finish, so that people don't have to skip the lectures to be at the SRM talks, which means we start at 5 or 5:30 p.m. local time.
Yeah.
And we have 2 speakers on each event, each speaking for 45 minutes with a short break in between.
Yeah.
And after the second talk, we have a 30 minutes of Q&A, question and answer session, followed by a networking dinner. So in total, it lasts for about 4 hours, let's say.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting, pretty engrossing, and fulfilling, at least for me. Now, to come back to your last question about the criteria of selecting these speakers. So as I said, we have 2 speakers, and we always strive to bring them from 2 different stratas. So we decide the theme of the month, and we let the speakers decide the titles of their talks. So if, as you last saw, we had in the month of May 2019, forests as the theme. So we had one speaker who was from a private consulting sphere, and the other from public academia sphere. So that would be another criteria, so that we have a bit of friendly sparring as well in the Q&A, to get to very distinct, if possible, mindsets and approaches to the things they do, how they do.
Nice. And how do you get in contact with these folks?
As I mentioned in my introduction, I have a fair amount of working experience already. And the nature of jobs were such that there was a lot of external partnerships and collaborations. So I was that way fortunate to have a wide network that I could tap into when curating for the speakers at the start of the initiative. But I also stepped out of my comfort zone when we decided on themes that I had no idea about. To give you an example, in the talks after the next, which are to take place in July, the theme of the month is oceans, and I have almost no exposure to oceans, and to find speakers in that, it really required me to go beyond my network and do something as simple as primary web search, or dig deep and think of people whom I may know, who might know speakers in the thematic area of oceans. So there is no set formula for acquiring speakers. It's really just reaching out, talking to people, or like I said, searching on the web.
That's very cool. I also want to bring it back to the actual session. Because I know a lot of the students are from many different backgrounds, and they often pose some challenging or unconventional questions to the speakers. So could you just talk a little bit about the dynamic that goes on between the students and the speakers during the QA sessions? Because I think it's one of the more engaging parts of this event.
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on its head. If you were there, you might have also noticed we spilled over the 30 minutes of Q&A, because I also think it's very sacred to the whole concept that enough students get to ask enough of their questions to the speakers, because like I said, at the end of the evening, I want them to leave the hall more informed, educated, or inspired, let's say. So I think we mostly had a very convincing and satisfying exchange in this. In the 2 years that I have been associated with the initiative, I have seen the listeners asking very simple questions like clarifications on what was told to them, or they've also gone on to ask the speakers about their opinion on certain topic or issue that was concerning them as individuals, or they've also tried to hear from the speakers their perspective of the future on the topic that they've talked on. If that answers your question.
Also, my favorite topic, food. There is some food served at the end of the session too, right?
Yes.
And this food is just up to you guys, or is it catered around the theme of the topic?
Networking dinner is yet another highlight of the event. I've heard this a lot from listeners. They rave about the dinner that they get to enjoy after the talks. I must again thank my co-founders for this, because I was less ambitious about what to do after the talks. I thought of a high tea when we were still building the concept. But what the co-founders said to me was, hey, in order to make it more engaging, why don't we ask our study colleagues to volunteer to make the dinner for the networking dinner? Nice. Make some dishes. And so everything that you see is served at the networking dinner after the talks is food that's cooked by students from different classes of the SRM study program.
Nice.
If the food is connected to the theme of the talk that evening, not really. Good question. I'm asking myself if that's even possible to do. Maybe after this podcast I would go back and think on that. But because it's taken care of by voluntary effort, we can't really be very choosy, so to say.
True.
We did start out by trying to have the entire spread of the dinner specifically from a region, so that we could tell all the participants, hey guys, tonight's dinner is Latin American, or tonight's dinner is Indian or South Asian. As the event grew older and we started having more and more regular participation from people, it became hard to get enough voluntary cooks from one region. So it also became a mashup
Nice.
of different cuisines, but was also a hit among participants.
I want to ask you about the organization of the event. You said you did have some experience from the professional world, but did you have experience organizing student events like this, or did you kind of take what you learned from professional life and then incorporate it with the experience from the other co-founders to figure out the structure and organizational aspects of running a student event like this?
More the latter, I would say. As part of my master's program, this is the only co-curricular activity that I engaged with. It's quite elaborate and exhaustive in itself.
Yeah.
If I think on my bachelor's, I was doing something co-curricular there as well, but that wasn't quite the same as this. And let me not go too much into the details of what that initiative was, but to answer your question of how we organized ourselves with SRM Talks, I think my professional experience and the experience and ideas of my co-founders came in very handy, I would say.
Nice. And quick question: who funds the project? Is it the school, or and also are the organizers paid, or is it all volunteer basis?
Right. So let me answer the second part of the question first. When the initiative started, we were 4 co-founders who ran it, and as time went by, the number of tasks grew in number, and also the other 3 co-founders decided to part ways from the initiative, because this was something they told themselves while coming on board, that they would support it, run it for the time that they are students themselves, and thereafter they would try to pass on the torch to the next generation.
Yeah.
And they did that. But while doing this handover, we came to realize that we might need more than just 4 people to run this. So to start with, the 4 of us, we had organized ourselves into 4 areas of work, or departments, if I may say.
Yeah.
I was responsible or accountable for speaker acquisition, curation. Rim looked at communications. Alejandro looked at finance, and Ariana at the logistics. And as we had the handover, I stayed on in the role of a mentor, but each of the 4 departments received 2 new recruits each. So we grew from a team of 4 into 9, and that's more or less how we've continued. Very recently, we had the next handover as well. All the organizing team members are doing this on a voluntary basis. So no, they're not paid. I think everyone is in it for the joy of just running something so meaningful and substantial. In terms of financing the initiative itself, yes, we have 3 sources of funding, all from the university. The first is from the faculty or the program division of Forest Science and Resource Management, which also offers our study program, Sustainable Resource Management, SRM. They support the speakers' travel and overnight stay costs. If they're traveling from far, they also stay for the night.
That's pretty good.
Yes. The TUM International Center supports us with the costs towards food and drinks. Very recently, we had a 3rd regular contribution offered to us, which is again kind of like a part of the program division of Forest Science and Resource Management, but coming to us from the Erasmus budget. That's looked at by Dr. Martin Döhlerer, who's one of the faculty member, and to my happiness and contentment, one of the regular participants at SRM Talks. And who must also not go unmentioned are our drink sponsors, Bionade. Alejandro got this idea out of, on the fly to contact a sustainable product company to see if they would maybe like to support us in any capacity possible. And he reached out to Bionade, and Bionade were quite sold on our idea, on our concept, but said that they cannot finance us in any form, but what they could do is offer us the refreshment drinks year on year.
Yeah, I was wondering why they were all from this one company, but now it makes sense.
Yes, so that's how the initiative is supported.
And I want to know from your personal level, have you taken any lessons in terms of working with people management, coordinating, and even mentorship from this?
A lot, yes. I think I've had experience in managing teams, but specifically speaking, I did that back in India. And the team that I worked with were all fellow Indians.
Yeah.
And so much so that from the same city,
Okay.
let's say. But coming to SRM, as I just mentioned earlier, it's an international master's program.
Yeah.
Each year, the program takes in about 100 students with approximately 30 to 35 different nationalities.
Big mix, yeah.
Big mix. So you can imagine it's such cultural diversity that it's both enriching and challenging at the same time to work with a team of 8 to 10 people from 4 or 5 different nationalities, having different ideas of how to do things. So I would say I'm learning something from them each day.
Nice. I was going to ask you a question about rewards and challenges, but I feel like this was a reward, so I want to ask you about a challenge. Recently, I remember right before this event that we covered, one of the speakers fell ill and had to drop out in the last minute. So you had to basically scramble and get a speaker and make sure the speaker was ready within maybe 24 hours. Could you talk about this experience and what went down, what happened?
Right. So I think the biggest challenge for us in SRM Talks is getting the right speakers. So curation is, I would call, the most challenging aspect of it. Yeah. Both in terms of getting a speaker who can deliver a good talk, who fits to the theme, but then also fits the budget.
Yeah.
And then, as you just pointed out, at the last talk on forests, unfortunately one of the speakers fell sick shortly before the talk and had to withdraw. And this is the second such instance over the 15-16 talks that we've had. The last time we could not even manage to fill that gap, unfortunately. But this time we were successful, and once again a big thanks to our substitute speaker, Professor Jonathan Onyekwelo. But yeah, there are these unforeseen challenges about speakers cancelling at short notice, which would count as the second big challenge for the initiative. The others, in terms of keeping up with the timelines of organizing things when you're doing the work on voluntary basis and all, I don't think that needs a big mention, because I think those are rather frequently occurring or heard of with voluntary initiatives.
Nice. And when you got this speaker within this short time span, was he in the background as a backup, or did you have to really scramble and ask around, who can we get here in a short amount of time?
So Professor Onyekwelo was not in a pipeline. Yeah. We had to just his name had come up some time ago. It was in fact proposed to us by someone from the faculty, but among the different backgrounds that we try to curate for speakers, we keep academia as one of our least favored options, because then that becomes very similar to the lectures that the students anyway have in the study program. So we try to bring speakers from industry, from public sector, from civil society organizations, or even independent activists, artists, and so on and so forth. And then maybe someone from academia. Yeah. So like I said, in this particular case, he was not in our pipeline. His name was proposed to us at some point of time, And then when we realized we needed someone to fill in for the speaker who had cancelled, we just went to him. But on a more regular basis, for each talk, we do develop a pipeline of speakers and start contacting them on a priority basis. And we are also very honest to these potential speakers. We tell them that we are in contact with others as well. So our final decision would be dictated by several factors about their willingness to be a speaker at our initiative, how quick they are in giving us a confirmation, and also depending on the confirmations from our other potential speakers. Yeah. And like I said, these are very experienced people. These are people who've been speakers in public forums before, so they know how this usually plays out.
Nice.
So it doesn't catch them unaware.
And speaking of coming from the business world, I know that some of the speakers during maybe some of these networking sessions have established contact with the students and even employment opportunities. Can you talk about that? What an opportunity that is for students?
Yes. As I said, SRM Talks was to bridge that gap between academia and practice, bring students of the different study programs as part of our program division together.
Yeah.
And then the third goal of SRM Talks was to help students network and find suitable career opportunities after studies. And what I also really appreciate about the education system in Germany is that the students are not choked with lectures from Monday morning till Friday evening.
Yeah, it's great.
It gives them the opportunity to take some time and devote some time to practicing things that they're learning in the classrooms by taking up part-time jobs, student jobs, so to say. So the participants at the SRM Talks, as I have seen, gained useful contacts.
Yeah.
Some of them culminated in them getting student jobs during the course of their studies. And I know a couple of cases where the students graduated and went on to get full-time jobs.
I'd say for a student, that's a very good scenario.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. I want to make this, give you the next question as a more abstract one. So if you had, let's say, unlimited budget, unlimited reach and influence for SRM Talks, is there a dream guest that you would like to have?
Yes. I can describe to you what kind of a speaker can this dream speaker be, but I don't know if I can put a name, if I can actually tell you that I want this very person.
Okay.
So, of course, an unlimited budget would help us get a speaker even from far and wide. So if there's someone very influential, someone very inspiring, that maybe the student fraternity even worships for the kind of achievements that he or she has accomplished in the area of sustainability, I would really love to bring this person. And the other individual that I could think of is someone from the grassroots, someone completely unheard of, a commoner who is working very hard day in, day off, working with the land, and this could even be a farmer practicing natural farming methods for several decades now, and setting the example of how things should be done that we are trying to discuss and deliberate here in the classrooms. So what I'm trying to just round up my answer, I'm saying someone very popular, someone very big in the sustainability sector, or someone completely unheard of, but who could actually also be equally inspiring to us by sharing his experience.
Have you ever thought of having a survey to see if from the guests or participants, I mean, to see who they would like to have on board, something like that?
Yes. We really strive to make SRM Talks a two-way exchange we don't want to just offer the participants what we think is best. So in regular time intervals, we try to hold a survey of what are the kind of thematic themes that the students or the participants would like to hear in the forthcoming talks. These are online surveys that I'm talking about. And next to this, at every talk, we have 2 feedback boxes that are kept next to the networking dinner table for students to put a small slip of paper giving their feedback on the format or the proceedings of the talk, and also on the kind of speakers or the speakers they would like to see at SRM Talks.
Do you have any memorable feedback cards that you pulled out of the box and you think, wow, this is really funny or engaging or interesting?
Our next talk, which is on environmental justice, was something that I think did not occur to anyone from the organizing team, but it was something that we pulled out of that feedback box. And this has in turn given us the opportunity to invite an activist for the first time at SRM Talks. I would not divulge more details on it now. It would be made available when our invitations are sent out in about a week's time from now.
Nice. So by the time the people are listening to this SRM talk may have already happened. But I'm glad you brought up the point of activism and environmentalism, because I was at a protest covering a climate march for Munich called Fridays for the Future, and I saw a couple signs kind of bashing on capitalism, right? And if you're not from the sustainability world, you might think sustainability is just one homogenous group, but within sustainability there are plenty of different sects, people from different backgrounds, either financially or socially or even culturally, and they have different ideas about how to achieve sustainability, how to achieve environmental protection. So I would like to hear your views on capitalism versus environmentalism. Does one have to come at the price of another, or can they be intertwined and succeed together?
Good question.
We jumped pretty deep in there. Sorry, guys. We just went from food to this, but yeah.
But I like to hear. I'm happy that you asked this question. I think I'll break this question also into 2 parts. You talked something about posters or signs that you saw at the climate march where they were bashing big industries or basically capitalists. And then you asked me about my view on how environmentalism and capitalism engage with each other. So to the first point about bashing, I have a slightly different methodology at dealing with this issue at hand. And to speak in much simpler words, I always say that when you have a tension, either you can keep howling about it, or you can propose an alternative to it. And I'm always seeking for alternatives and solutions. So I say, while it's good to critique capitalism or big industries, one should also speak about the alternatives and solutions to that. And in my day-to-day life, I try to always propose these solutions and alternatives. On that question about how environmentalism and capitalism would engage with each other, by the sheer nature or the dynamics of capitalism, I think it always comes at a severe stress on the environment and society. And for this reason, I think such big structures or structures that are very fueled with ideas of strong economy, ever-growing economy and wealth, it's I won't say impossible, but very difficult to fathom that also I'm missing the words here now, but taking the cause of environment and society forward with it. So, in a nutshell, I think if we want to see a harmonious society, a flourishing planet and nature, the economic structures must also be more decentralized and not so profit driven, but rather meaning driven.
Do you think sustainable entrepreneurship has a place in this middle ground that you're talking about?
To a large extent, yes.
Okay, very good. Now, also abstract, but a little different.
Yeah.
Could you name a mentor or a role model of yours and tell us why you admire this person?
Sure. I don't want to sound all over the place, but I'm also someone who has several role models.
Okay, go ahead.
That being said, I would still like to focus this answer. And maybe I give you a little background to why I'm going to give you the names that I give you. I like to see myself as someone who is a simpleton, a commoner, and the simplest of the things make the greatest amount of sense to me. And as I said, I'm a commoner. It's also the most common people around me, people that I can see in flesh and blood, engage with at will. Also the people who inspire me the most.
Okay.
And two such people I would name are, in fact, my current bosses. Justus Schütze at Buzzin and Alexander Watson at Open Forests. They are, in my recent times, the biggest role models. And I learn humongous amount of... I learn a lot from them, I would say. And just to give you a few words about each one of them, Justus Schütze is the founder of Buzzin, a co-founder, so to say. And he started Buzzin 10 years ago, quitting his very successful job as an energy trader, where he was making a lot of money, having a very successful life, but he took a few steps back, asked himself whether he was really getting some meaning out of the job that he does. And when he saw that that wasn't quite the case, he started Buzzin. And again, in a nutshell, Buzzin is a decentralized and clean energy enterprise based in Munich. It's working in the direction of the energy transition that Germany and EU states are trying to achieve, 100% clean energy. But Buzzin is tackling this topic through a slightly different lens. We at Buzzin are trying to look at solutions that are more decentralized and are adopted and spearheaded by the community itself. That's about Buzzin and Justus Schütze. Talking about Open Forests, Open Forests is based in Bonn. It's giving forest management and information technology consulting services to a wide spectrum of clients globally, but mostly non-profits and organizations that are, or initiatives that are working on the ground with smallholders. When I say smallholders, I mean agroforestry, social forestry, microforestry. So forests are at the heart of the business.
Yeah.
Alexander Watson is also a co-founder along with Stefan Haas and Patrick Ribeiro at Open Forests. I mentioned Alexander alone because I work very closely with him. And Alexander, again, is an expert in forest management and forest finance. Also held a very lucrative job in this sector, which would take him around the world on 1 week long visits in the tropics, in the subtropics, in the savannas.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, talk to local stakeholders, educate them on how they should manage their projects and their country, so to say, and then come back and earn big money. But again, he quit that. He, along with Stefan and Patrick, decided to float Open Forests, 5 to 10 years ago. And letting go of all those fortunes, they are now working so hard sitting in their basements, in their kitchens, to develop these robust tools and systems that are actually needed, not some things that they are simply good at developing and then trying hard through business developments and sales processes to sell them to the potential clients, but really understanding what is required out there and then trying to develop that and working day in, day out tirelessly, both Open Forest and Buzzin, to really give to the planet and people what they really need to sustain.
Nice.
And this I've and just simply from observing what they do to learning things from them that I learned from my personal interactions, it's deeply moving, touching, and inspiring for me.
Nice. That's a great answer. As I'm listening, I'm wondering how you manage your time between these three big entities.
Yes, that's again part of the reason why I admire them so much. Both the organizations and whoever I'm answerable to in the SRM Talks project, in whatever capacity, they're all very sensitive and appreciative to the fact that I have these vibrant and diverse interest sets, and that I'm so passionate about each one of them, and each one of them feels that or understands that by only letting me pursue these other things am I able to give my 100% to what concerns them. So and they also take personal interest in these other projects that I'm part of, so that sort of gives me the freedom and the flexibility to pursue it. That's on the let's say on the permission side of it. So
do you go out front and let them know, hey, this is what I have going on, and in order for me to contribute, I need you to allow me to go other places as well?
Yes, I'm very transparent with them before the first handshake, let's say. And yeah, on the time front, I think I work very hard to be organized.
Yeah.
And I think organize myself very well in order to not be all over the place and still be able to achieve the targets that I have with each of the projects.
Nice.
And also not exhausting myself in the process.
That's something I'm trying to work on as well.
Yeah.
So I want to know, is there anything people can look out for the near future of SRM Talks, maybe 4 or 5 months down the line?
Something that we are already trying to do is open up SRM Talks to a wider spectrum of audience.
Okay.
It's already an initiative that is open doors. Anyone and everyone can come in. But I think what we have not done yet is go out to different groups of potential audience. For instance, as you know, this happens at the Weinstefan Freising campus of Technical University of Munich. But this is still, I think, known only to students on campus, students and faculty.
Yeah.
And given the size of Freising, there is the potential to turn SRM Talks into a city event. And I know this because there have been other student initiatives which have found place on the city annual calendar in the past. So I'm fairly confident that SRM Talks can also find that place. What this would do is that there is more visibility to the initiative, and just regular citizens of the town would then know that this is happening and that they're welcome. So I think that's something that I think of in the near future. In terms of what the students could expect or the participants could expect from the talks, is we are thinking of trying out a trilogue model wherein we have not just 2 but 3 speakers, and then it would be very hard to put in exact words because it's still an idea, wherein the 3 speakers don't just stand in front of the audience one after the other, show slides and speak what they want to, but more like a discussion between the 3 speakers without the slides perhaps.
Yeah.
And each one of them trying to tell the other about what they think, but then also trying to ask what the other thinks on a certain topic.
Like a panel discussion sort of.
Yeah. I like to call it a trilogue.
Trilogue. I like that. So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, do you have any message for people maybe listening in New Jersey, in Thailand, England, Ireland, India, anywhere in the world?
Wow. Didn't quite think about it, but as you mentioned other nations, I would say in the context of what we just exchanged today, SRM Talks. Yeah. So if people are planning on visiting Germany, I would encourage them to look up our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page. We haven't launched a website yet, but once we do, and we hope to do that soon, there will be information about it on the Facebook and the LinkedIn page. So I would ask people planning on visiting Germany to look up the SRM Talks schedule. And if they could imagine being in Munich at a time when SRM Talks is going to happen, I would wholeheartedly like to welcome the listeners to be part of it. Besides that, I would also encourage people living in Munich and Germany to look up what my two employers, Buzzin and Open Forests, are doing as part of their business. These are very ethical and conscious businesses. These would be the alternatives that I was mentioning to capitalism in terms of how we can do business, engage with economy, but stay very sensitive to the need of the hour when it comes to environment and societies. And lastly, stepping a bit away from today's topic, but something that I always like to tell people, just reflect on how we are living our lives as consumers, as people on this planet who consume the resources, and just be more conscious of our lifestyles, because I think the first step towards a sustainable society, a sustainable planet, is each individual taking corrective measures on with themselves.
Nice.
Yeah, I would wrap it up with that.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Chaitanya, to everyone else. You heard it here at Wobistdude. Check us out online, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye for now.
This evening,
this is the Srm. It's the world's largest data.
I come back to this